There was a rebellion in the spirit realm before Eden. Welcome to Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert. This is a special web exclusive broadcast in a couple of ways. We're recording this from our home studio today because of an ice storm that's moved through the Ozarks, which has kept our guest from making the trip down to us so that we could actually record face-to-face in studio. But rather than let the information sit and wait, we are doing this via Skype from his home office as we talk about what happened in the days before Adam and Eve and why that's relevant to us today. What it implies for the days ahead. This will in fact be the theme of the 2020 True Legends Conference coming to Branson, back to the Mansion Theater in Branson, July 10th through 12th of 2020. The title of the conference, Ancient Cataclysms and Coming Catastrophes, the Pre-Adamic Era and the Return of the Days of Noah. We welcome back to Skywatch TV, Steve Quayle. Steve, good to talk with you again.
Well, thank you for having me back. And also, Derek, this is a very timely, most important event, in my opinion, due to Tom Horn's release of his book, Wormwood.
Right.
And Tom shared his out-of-body experience about how the whole revelation of Wormwood came into being. I think it's important for people to understand something. We just don't pull these themes out of our hat. We pray about them. And since I'm the guy that pretty much has got to spearhead it up, and I've been blessed to spearhead it up, it was obviously made clear to me about, 2 months of September, probably around November of last year, meaning November of 2019, that this is the direction that God wanted us to take for this year. Now, why it's critical and very, very time sensitive is this. The Bible says in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. As Tom and I have been on so many shows over 2 decades together, he and I do not corroborate or collaborate with each other before we come out with our independent works. I think that's a testimony to this, if you will, to the symphonic conducting of the details down to the most minute details of the living God. He has Tom doing what Tom is doing. He has SQ doing what I'm doing. And those who are around me and help me, just like you, and those who are around you and you help Tom. But the deal is that one of the most prominent features, as you know, in ancient myths and legends is the history of cataclysms. And the history of cataclysms is so, I would say, in our face that it's the overriding and dominant theme, in my opinion, of ancient myths, legends, and history. It doesn't matter if you go to Machu Picchu in Peru, if you go to the Coricancha in Cusco, Peru. It doesn't matter if you go to the observatories in the desert Southwest. It doesn't matter where you go in the world. Observatories were because the priest class, which was usually the most knowledgeable class, was concerned and also frightened of the cataclysms that they had received through oral tradition or through whatever form of written, sticks, ogham, whatever it was. They understood and were terrified of Noah's flood. And there are people that don't believe it. I can tell you this, the universal flood culture is very much that. So what's interesting to me about this is that even up to 706 BC, the ancients talked about Mars. They called it different names, but Mars and how its proximity to Earth. In other words, we see Mars, where we see it now between, the Earth, and then you've got Mars and you've got Jupiter. But there was a planet there called Rahab. Mm-hmm. And so what's fascinating is the ancients knew that the gods made war. And that's one of the titles of one of Zechariah Sitchin's book. I only wish he would have understood it in the Genesis concept, war between gods and men. But the thing is as late as 706 BC, there are historic records of Mars coming within 15 to 20,000 miles of the Earth, pole to pole, when it had an elliptical orbit. Now, what's interesting, people, when they talk about Atlantis, this I'm going to get into some cool stuff here, even what I call cool stuff, is that when Solon was sent to, it went to Egypt to Sais, S-A-I-S, some people pronounce it Say. Mm-hmm. It's at the mouth of the Nile River. And the Egyptians have a history that really not only preceded the Greeks, but absolutely went back into eons before the Greeks even knew that there was history. The Greeks just passed it off as the time of the Titans or the Olympians. Mm-hmm. But a famous statement by the priests of Sais and I forget his name, Sanchi, I think, Sanchi, made this statement. He said, oh, and I'm paraphrasing, but when it comes to understanding antiquity and catastrophic events, you Greeks are but children, for there have always been catastrophes and will always be. That's recorded in Plato's Timaeus and Critias. So, years ago, when I came to Jesus 49 years ago, this coming year in 2020, one of the fascinations I had was with the biblical flood and ice epoch. And I came from the gutter into the kingdom, so there was a lot of questions I had. But one of the very first books I read was by Donald Patton, the late Donald Patton, Patten, called The Biblical Flood and Ice Epoch. And the difference between catastrophism and what would be called geological uniformitarianism, which Lyell and others, that took millions of years, or Carl Sagan's famous billions and billions of years, when you take in the catastrophic model, when you see the electrical nature of even something like Roche's limit, which states that a planetary body based on the magnetic field and its proximal location to a lesser magnetic field causes a lesser to explode. And it's called Roche's limit, Roche's limit. And then you have Bode's law in physics, that's named for the physicist that designed it, that said basically it's got to be a planet between Mars and Jupiter.
Right.
And why is the planet Mars always associated with war? And now we've got all the interest in Mars, and can I say something, pun intended? We haven't come full circle. We're coming to an elliptical orbit point in our creation. So, this is why I think that ancient cataclysms and coming catastrophes are so important, because, again, to try and get people that believe in an old earth and a new earth to reconcile is really very difficult. But it's not if they think something through, and that is this. If obviously God in the book of Genesis had to replenish the earth, they'll even argue over that word in Hebrew for replenish, but in Isaiah 45, it says that God did not create the earth without form and void. Isaiah 45, 18? And yet in Genesis 1:1, you come to the point of going, wait a minute, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And then you go to Jeremiah chapter 4, and it talks about a great flood of Jeremiah that precedes the flood of Noah, when there was no cities and no Adam, no man. That word in Hebrew is Adam or Adama,
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that this year's 2020 Branson, I think that if anybody has not had their mind blown before, and I'm talking in a good way, that this will be the most astonishing presentation from some of the most, I would say, articulate and well-researched people in the world as it relates to ancient cataclysms and future prophetic events, because wormwood is going to affect everybody.
Yeah.
And I got news for you. It's probably, in my opinion now, the critical phase of all this. It'll explain the earthquakes that are going on. As we're on, your broadcast right now, Philippines are undergoing massive earthquakes. We're seeing magma moving in the United States. We're seeing, for the first time in history, 400 or 500 plus NASA flights every day, 24 hours a day, mapping, monitoring, measuring with the most sophisticated sensors. So we're in a time where not only will the winds and waves roar, but men's hearts are going to fail them for fear of looking after those things coming upon the earth. So this year at our, I'm looking off my monitor, I'm sorry I have to, but ancient cataclysms and the coming catastrophes, it puts into perspective God's character, his nature, his actions. He's not arbitrary, and there's nothing new under the sun. This is going to be an amazing presentation. Amazing.
Yeah, well, there are a number of different topics that can be rolled under this general heading. And again, just for people to make note, July 10th through 12th of 2020 are the dates. And we want to encourage you, by the way, if you're interested in these topics and some of the speakers who will be there, besides Steve Quayle, of course, L.A. Marzulli will be there, Russ Dizdar, Gary Wayne, author of the Genesis 6 Conspiracy, who has created really a magnum opus of 900 pages if you get the print copy of that book, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy. Celeste Solum, Bob Griswold, Carl Teichrib, whose work, Game of Gods, is absolutely an essential for your reference library. Daniel Holdings, Dr. Michael Lake, Darren Geisinger, and I will be speaking this year. and doing some research right now that Sharon and I are finding fascinating. I'm blessed to be married to a researcher who's even more into this than if that's possible than I am, Steve, because we were able to bounce ideas off of each other, and the end result is that she's got some fantastic research that she can put into a fictional context to give people a story that they can hang on to so they can visualize how these things might play out. And then I've got the research to come up with some nonfiction stuff, but we're working together now on some nonfiction projects that are really, I think, going to drop some jaws in the years ahead. In fact, next year, plan to, at the conference in July, show some documentation of let's just say a geological feature on the Golan Heights close to Mount Hermon that has gone previously unnoticed by both the secular archaeologists who work on the Golan Heights, and that area has been extensively surveyed since the Six-Day War in 1967. It's gone completely unnoticed and missed until by accident a friend of ours in Colorado and us just sort of stumbled onto it on Google Earth, and I won't say a whole lot more than that, but I'm going to hint at it in the article that I'm currently writing for Gen6.com, as the speakers are putting together a series of articles to kind of build interest and kind of lay the framework for the topics of discussion at the conference. But register early, because I can tell you from experience now, having lived in this area for just going on 5 years, that when you get into the summer months in Branson, things fill up fast. The hotels fill up quickly, and of course this conference is going to sell out quickly because of the topic material and the speakers who are lining up. But if you're planning on coming to Branson for the True Legends Conference in July of 2020, the ancient cataclysms and coming catastrophes, do it soon. For a couple of reasons. First of all, because hotels will fill up soon as people make vacation plans, but also because, Steve, I understand you're offering a $20 discount for people who register at gen6.com before January 15th of 2020.
Absolutely. And I will say this, that the interest has pretty much doubled over last year. So, we want to give people the $20 from $130 to $110. And we want to make sure they get registered, and get their hotel rooms for the very reasons you've said. But also, Derek, the thing that's interesting is that we normally would have had them in September, obviously, but July. And I think the issue is one of two. The events that are going to transpire coming this fall are going to accelerate. The word I'm going to use is acceleration. And even now, as we're talking about it, and we're in December, the events in the earthquake realm and magma realm, we're just talking about things that are for the first time in history taking place on such a, if you will, a global level of just extreme importance. For instance, today they're talking about the Pacific Ocean and its acidification, which turns the water into acid, changes the whole pH, and it's killing all the fish. Well, so is Fukushima and the radiation. But think about this. We're seeing now a country that no longer values truth. It values opinions, even to the point of politicians saying the truth doesn't matter, it's just what do we feel. Well, when you lose your foundation, as King Solomon said, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? The answer is by obvious, answering the question, nothing. Because if you're trying to build a house and got no foundation, hey, you sticks and stones may cover you tonight, but the tornado will take you tomorrow. My rewriting of fairy tales, fractured. But the point is that we're at a pivotal point now with Earth changes. We're at a pivotal point, and I'm on record as saying this. There are types of earthquakes and subduction zones. Subduction goes underneath, one plate underneath. An overthrust goes over. It is my contention, I've said this for 10 years, that we're going to see the ruins of ancient civilizations that were believed to only be myth and fantasy coming up out of the water. And again, there's nothing more powerful force on Earth than, if you will, the motions of plate tectonics. And it's in the book of Genesis, chapter 10, that it says that God separated the continents during the time of Peleg. Well, that sure shows a lot of people who believe in Gondwanaland and Pangea and all these millions and billions of years. We're talking about forces. For instance, Mars. When you look at Mars and its proximal, everything from its spin ratio, everything is just about the same as Earth. And then you look at basically the days and what's, as you know, the Martian atmosphere was believed to have had an Earth-like atmosphere until something ripped it away. Well, now there are scientists, Bezos and all the billionaires, who want to go back to Mars, And it's my contention that we've already been there, and I'm not trying to be wooey or anything, and I want to give you a good example. Even now, people who are getting older in age who have been part of the Space Command, and President Trump's wanting a Space Command, Derek, that's just kind of like saying, gee, I'd like to have a country and have the Marines. Well, we already have the Marines. That's absolutely been in play. And so, again, having been tutored into a world that I didn't even know existed, what they call ultra black, the amount of information that's fed to the American public is because we're gullible. And the former head of the CIA, William Casey, stated that the CIA will know that their effects at mind control have been effective when everything the American people believe is a lie. And now look at the foundations, again, of liberty, of law enforcement. Everything's up for grabs. And unfortunately, when the devil stirs the pot, he's there to provide the answer. But the answer he provides is at the extinction base of humans. And he's getting people, this, to basically download or believe they can download their spirit or souls. I don't think they understand the difference between spirit and soul. The spirit is what God breathed into Adam, the clay man, and that interaction with the spirit, with what God had created, was a soul, mind, will, intellect, and emotions. So they will never be able to do that. But demon-possessed machines are on the horizon. It'll make Stephen King novels look like basically nursery rhymes. So getting back to the theme, the pre-Adamic era and the return of the days of Noah. If Jesus made that point so emphatically, then why do people not understand that it wasn't just the sexual corruption in the days of Noah, but it was violence? And if I don't think anybody in the world can not make the statement that violence is increasing. I mean, you've got every day or every other day some father killing his wife and children and turning the gun on himself, or vice versa. You got people going just insane, doing insane things. So there is a reason for that. And there's a reason that all of those events are where, we used to hear the word lunatic, or he's out of his mind. The geology of the planet's changing, along with even the magnetic field. So when we're dealing with ancient cataclysms and coming catastrophes, we're dealing with advanced physics, but physics that the ancients understood and were terrified of. We've got all the advanced physics, and we don't understand what the ancients knew, and we don't take a cue from them, This isn't 2012 by Hollywood. This is beyond 2012. And we're now at the point where it's going to become so problematic that people, when they're armed with the knowledge of what's coming, they can really be better prepared to handle it and deal with it. So, ladies and gentlemen, you go to Gen6, GENSIX.com. There's a place to click on and get your registration, because I'm telling you, this year it will sell out, and it will sell out early.
Yeah. We're entering this conference really addresses the intersection of science, of prophecy, biblical prophecy, and of spiritualism, and a lot of pagan spiritualism, just like last year's conference dealing with the alien question. Chaos, Leviathan, which was the primordial dragon or monster that had to be defeated in order to create the world, to create an orderly habitat for humanity. That's a story that, like the flood, crosses many ancient cultures. We see it in ancient Mesopotamia, most of the cultures around ancient Israel, in fact. And this is one of the things that led skeptics in the 19th century to believe that the Hebrews had stolen their religion. The similarities with the Babylonian creation account, the Sumerian creation account, the Canaanite creation account, and what we read in the book of Genesis. Of course, Genesis has the story correct, but all of these cultures, and even when you get further away to the Indus Valley civilization, the Norse civilization, you've got the same story where a warrior god had to defeat an ancient monster representing chaos. And now you've got occult magicians trying to perform magical workings to bring chaos back. These devotees of Aleister Crowley, who've created these magical strains that believe they're somehow summoning the ancient chaos god Set or Typhon to return from somewhere in the vicinity of the star Sirius. Well, I argue in my book, Last Clash of the Titans, that Leviathan, anti-order, since Christ was the one who spoke the world into existence, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. I argue that Leviathan is Antichrist. And when he returns, he's coming back up out of the abyss and trying to wreak revenge for what we read in Genesis 1:2, which was God's spirit hovering over the deep, the Tehom, the Tiamat, the Leviathan, like a whipped puppy, and just saying, stay. We're going to see the return of chaos upon the earth, and pray that we're not here when that takes place, because it will be shortly after that God snaps his fingers and puts an end to all things. This is what lies ahead, but those with a scientific worldview, those with a pagan worldview, don't understand, Steve, that this is what's coming back upon the earth. I think we as Christians owe it to ourselves, to our children and grandchildren, to be informed, and so that's why we're thankful that you, True Legends, are putting together the conference and bringing together speakers like L.A. Marzulli and Russ Dizdar, Celeste Solum, Bob Griswold, Daniel Holdings, Michael Lake, Carl Teichribb, to address these issues. I'm honored to be a part of this, and hopefully will contribute some things that will get people to think. We as Christians don't need to be afraid, but we should be informed so that we can share this information and then share the love of Christ, obviously, with those around us who don't understand what's going on, and because of that, find themselves in terror at the events that are unfolding, things that we've been warned about in Scripture.
Well, I think that when God said his people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, and not because, again, it's that he presents it to them. Surely the Lord God will do nothing except he reveals his secrets to his servants, the prophets. But in that, God's people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, not because, again, he doesn't present it, but because the people reject it. And we're coming to a point in history, I'll make a powerful statement. This is a power chord on a guitar right now, is that denial will be unavailable due to the reality of the horror of the day, Horror. And so the thing that we're trying to do is, I find this, knowledge offsets fear. Understanding of that which is coming, when it comes, you're already prepared. And Derek, here's a question. This is the probably the overriding question of this year's theme and ancient cataclysms and coming catastrophes. I always want to reverse that statement. The thing is that how does one who is biblically based, let's say researched, well-researched, you're researched, I'm researched, Tom's a researcher, all the people we have here are basically researchers, authors, but how do we transfer the context that we understand to others and then have it kind of basically being blown away when Jesus basically says, there's never been anything like it, nor will be again. And except the days be short for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. So we've got Leviathan, we have Behemoth, we have all of the legendary creatures of mythology. And obviously even the Old Testament talks about satyrs. It talks about in the 91st Psalm, what you're talking about is Lilith the night hag, the female she-demons. And so the thing is that what we're going to be presenting, by the way, Celeste Solum, interesting. She was so tied in with the government for so long. She's probably one, and I say this not to flatter, but rich in understanding of how it all integrates and how the government is facilitating the facade. There you go, the facilitating of the facade. And it will come to the point where we as Christians, we're already in the vilification and nullification phase, IVND, and that's the formula. I've talked about that on radio for 25 years. Identify, vilify, nullify, destroy. And now our brethren around the world are being destroyed. I want to get back to Mount Hermon, because Mount Hermon, everybody doesn't understand this, that again, just as you look at the plains of Giza, you're going to have to look underground, okay? Because the citadels that are underground are absolutely, they've been built on, they've been covered over, and even double floodgated. There's a new word for you, floodgated. It's not like watergated, but floodgated. When you look at the water erosion, and you get the geologists and the hydrologists looking at everything from the Great Sphinx to the pyramids. But I'll give you a good example. A couple of years ago, when the film crew for True Legends was down in Peru and Bolivia, Bolivia had unearthed an entire civilization that predated anything they'd known before. But the problem is they ran into some living creatures, and they weren't very nice entities. And so they had to bring in a special team from the U.S. And, I know those guys. When I say this, I was affiliated with those guys, knowing what they do. They basically, you heard me in Branson, they go after the things that go bump in the night, and they know how to bump back. But the stories of L.A. Marzulli and his people that battled the giants in Afghanistan, and my pilot flying the dead giant out of Kandahar, 2 different giants, by the way, Bagram, one, mine, Kandahar. They're not the same thing, just being recycled. But the problem is that now, I was watching a Bigfoot show. Let me tell you this. It's really good. I think it's on the Travel Channel. It's the new Bigfoot show. And one of the key researchers, and bingo, this set it off to me, one of the key researchers started getting such bad headaches behind his eyes. Never had headaches before. He said he felt like it was going to explode. Those are the exact words that my 4-star general, active duty, not retired, said that when they have in Dulce, which is one of the underground bases, they have a red line. You can't go past it because the emanations from the giants, which are supernatural. Here's what I want to make everybody understand. The giants of antiquity, they weren't just normal big guys. They weren't like Shrek. They weren't, these were powerful entities, but their mental abilities were enough to basically, I guess you'd say almost like an astral weapon. And when I heard that I don't know the name of the show, but it's on the Travel Channel. I watched it last night. It just clicked on me because not only did the general tell me that, but one of the most famous Russian ophthalmologists relayed that to Klaus Dona, who's one of the most in-depth researchers for pre-flood art and architecture, and also, archaeology. What's the word I want? Ancient stuff.
Paleontology?
And artifacts. Okay, there's the word. Yeah. Artifacts. His name is Klaus Dona. Dear friend of mine. He's digging in some obscure area for the Citadel of the Giants and, in Southeast Asia. But we were friends, and he said, Steve, I just talked to Dr. Moldeshop, very famous eye optical surgeon. He said when he was in the caves in Tibet, they had a giant sleeping in stasis, and he had respiration, everything. The monks said, you cannot go beyond this line drawn in the sand, so to speak. Wonder if that's where that came from. But the point is that and Dr. Moldeshop, being a scientist, he said, Klaus, of course I could not just settle for that. And he said the minute he just got close to it, this is an old wives' tale. I know the men. Okay, I know Dr. Moldeshop through his reputation. I don't know him personally, but I know Klaus Dona personally. And he said, Steve, the monks grabbed him. And he said at the moment they grabbed him, his head felt like the worst headache he'd ever had, and he was ready to explode. So the question is, there are telepathic communication powers, and if you will, the whole thing. And this gets interesting because, as you know, I presented at Branson in 2019 the whole Ben Rich statement, the head of Lockheed Skunk Works, who invented, he's called the father of stealth technology, talked about the way the spaceships work are by basically ESP. So there is a whole realm of understanding of, if you will, almost not only teleportation, but telekinetic teleportation. And it deals with, again, jumping dimensions. So I say all that to say this, that the ancient cataclysms and catastrophes, if Jesus himself said it's just going to be like in the days of Noah, then I think it behooves us, Derek, to warn people. This is what was really going on. Mm-hmm. And for those who want to come to this, I promise this will be different. It's going to be so not necessarily intense, but it will be informational intensive. One of the things we're doing on the website, thegen6.com, obviously you're writing, I'm writing. Those of us who are going to be speaking are going to be providing something new in the way of original articles over the next period until we get to July. We're trying to build the knowledge base for the people that will be attending and those people who have already attended to put all the pieces together. It's kind of like having a puzzle party, trying to put a castle in Bavaria, Neuschwanstein, the famous, the one that Disneyland patterned their castle, but sitting around, and there's always that one piece that it's the piece. We've got the border, we've got a lot of different in the corners, but to get the quote heart of the puzzle, we're bringing the puzzle pieces together. And when people go, now I get it. Those are the most important words to me. Now I get it. 4 words, because then they see the bigger picture. And most people, quite candidly, they live in a fractured universe, and they see this. So I believe that Ancient Cataclysms and the Coming Catastrophes, Branson this year, July 10th to 12th, will bring it all together for them. And I really do. And I believe what you're going to add, especially, it's never, remember this, you need to put this as a new motto, okay, on your desk. It's never what you see on top of the ground. It's what's underneath it.
Amen.
All of the giant coffins that have floated out when the tunnels and the civilizations get flooded, at certain points when the Nile used to flood. And the giant sarcophaguses, we're not talking about, 8-footers. We're talking like 16, 20-footers. And they have to bring in the special forces teams. And what America has done in the height of our prominence and our prosperity is we've been able to buy the silence of a lot of different governments. Well, a lot of different governments are now saying, you know what? We can make a lot of money selling the artifacts. And I don't sell artifacts. I want everybody to know that. So FBI, I don't sell artifacts. But the black market for that kind of stuff is so great. And I'm telling you, it's astonishing, because you know what they want? They not only want the artifact, they want the power associated with the artifact. Sure. Like Hitler and the spear of Longinus, the spear of destiny that pierced Jesus' side. So Hitler spent a lot of the money of the Third Reich going all over the world to find all the stuff that we're talking about now. And in my opinion, they found it. And it all gets back to Spiritism, Blavatsky. It gets back to the most dark occult practices in the world. And it's going to open up for us in the same way. Yeah. It's going to play out in the same way.
Well, absolutely. It's all about the spiritual realm. And that's why Sharon and I wrote the book, if I can do a shameless plug here, Veneration, which is all about the veneration of those ancient giants and how it's manifest even to this day. So, but we're going to build on that and bring something new to the conference in 2020, July 10th through 12th. Ancient Cataclysms, Coming Catastrophes, the Pre-Adamic Era, and the Return of the Days of Noah. Register early for a couple of reasons. First of all, Branson in the summer fills up quick, but also you can save $20 on the registration if you do it by January 15th of 2020. You get $20 discount off the $130 normal rate. You'll get in for $110. And again, by registering soon and taking care of your accommodations, hotel lodging early, you'll make sure you've got a place to stay during this conference, which you do not want to miss. Register today at gen6.com and keep your eyes on that website, as original articles already posted by Steve Quayle, Dr. Michael Lake, and others. And I've got one that's ready to go. I'll be sending that off to Darren Geisinger here very soon. So you'll start seeing some of that content as well in the weeks and months ahead. Steve, thanks very much for your time today. Sorry we didn't, the weather didn't allow your travel here to the Ozarks, but we look forward to seeing you soon, and can't wait for July to get here for this conference.
Thank you, Derek. And I look forward to, again, seeing how neat all this stuff will be brought together. And again, I'm telling everyone, watch the news between now and July. Upheaval, tumult, some people pronounce it different, but peril, unusual, geological, astronomical, everything is going to break the mold and traditional records. Everything is going to be record breaking, and it's going to be very, very dangerous. And it's going to be very, very sad to watch the loss of lives as this stuff comes into play. Thank you, Derek. All
right. And we thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is Skywatch TV.
It's ground zero in a supernatural war that's lasted for millennia. Now, see it for yourself. Join Skywatch TV for a one-of-a-kind tour of Israel to places you'll never forget. Like mysterious Gilgal Rephaim, older than the pyramids, bigger than Stonehenge, and built to venerate the dead. Banias, sacred to the goat demon Pan. The altar of Joshua, where he declared that he and his house would serve the Lord. Bethel, where Jacob saw a stairway to heaven. And Jerusalem, which God has chosen for his resting place forever. Skywatch TV's Derek and Sharon Gilbert and special guest Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat lead you through the Holy Land from Mount Hermon to the Red Sea, with teaching along the way. And as a special bonus, a 4-day optional extension to Sardinia to see the ancient ziggurat of Monte Dakoti, megalithic tombs of the giants, and the Tophet of Taros, where children were sacrificed to the dark god Baal Haman. Or if you want more time in Sardinia, join us for our separate 8-day tour of the mysterious island. Skywatch TV's 2020 Tour of Israel, October 12th through 25th, with optional tour extensions in Sardinia. For more information and to reserve your place, log on to lipkintours.com.